Alright, hello. I'm going to try to do this very quickly. This is the scene in Back to the Future. This is what we're going to be looking at. This is the scene where Doc is looking at his watches, and he keeps repeating the word "damn." Okay, and this was actually Chuck mentioned it in the comments, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, I'd probably better go back over this, because this is, again, I mentioned to Chuck that this is one of the scenes in Back to the Future that really got me kind of going down the rabbit hole of the Hoover Dam idea, of the Hoover Dam collapse. Okay, this scene, and of course the hoverboard scene, or what I like to call the Hooverboard scene, these were two of the main things really led to this whole, kind of looking at this stuff in the rest of reality as well. This whole idea of looking at this stuff in and doing all these videos. So this is the scene, and again, I've got this in my back catalogue, buried somewhere in the back catalogue. I've mentioned this scene probably a couple of times actually, and I'm going to go back over some of the stuff that I mentioned about the scene before, but there's also a couple of new things that we'll talk about at the end of this. Okay, so the first thing is, notice the clock time right here is 5 to 10, and notice that the minute hand just changed there, and we're now 4 minutes to 10. Okay, that's important. Okay, because we're going to listen to Doc now. Oh, if you'd ever come on, get on with it, Doc.
Damn!
So there's his first damn.
Where is that kid?
Okay. Damn, where is that kid? He's in the dam. Okay, pocket watch comes out next.
Damn!
Okay. And then the next one is damn. And then check out Doc. He looks at the camera. He's making eye contact with the audience at this point, telling us something important here is going on, and he's addressing the audience. I think Chuck says something like that as well, maybe in his comment. I can't remember what video that was on, but it was on maybe one or two back. I'm not sure. But anyway, this is engagement with the audience to emphasize, that Doc is telling us something directly now. Okay. Anyway, the point of this is we've gone from this point right here. In fact, actually, Marty is just going to show up right now. You can just see him pulling up right here. So we're at 4 minutes to 10. Okay, and then when Marty makes the jump, we're at 4 minutes past 10. Okay, so if we just go to paint so I can show you those numbers. So we're at 10 o'clock is our middle point, right? So we're 4 minutes to 10, and then 4 minutes after 10. Okay, so this is the actual number on the clock tower when it goes down, which is when it stops. Okay, is 10:04. So what we have is an 8-minute jump between 4 till 10. Blooming hell. 4 till 10 and 4 past 10. So we have an 8-minute jump. So we have this 8-10 reference, which of course is can be a 1-8 number there if we just use numerology. Okay, so this of course is our balanced number of man, if you like, and obviously we have that date coming up. Actually, it's 7:31 today, so it will be tomorrow when this date happens. Okay, so August the 1st, and it's not necessarily August the 1st. There's a ton of other dates that reference 1-8 in the year, but of course August the 1st can be one of those dates. So What do I want to say about this? Well, what's interesting is, you know, when um, when we see this on the screen, this number here, 10:04 on the clock tower, and it stops. The other reference number that we see clearly at that point is 911. Okay, because we see the Western Auto sign, you know, and then the two fire trails, okay, in the road, the 911 like that. Okay, so what we've got going on is we have got, get rid of some of this, get rid of that as well. I don't know why I got that there. We have got 911 connecting quite nicely with this number here. Okay, so the point that I'm going to make here is, if we want to get back to this point here, balance, okay, this number 10, okay, we have to make a jump backwards, okay, or maybe we're getting back to this point over here, I'm not sure, but we're making a jump. Okay, we're going to make a jump, and so if we go from 911 and we go backwards, well, if we read 10:04 backwards, right, so we're going to read 4001, drop the zeros out because they don't count for anything, but that's 41. Okay, so if I go 41 days back from 9/11, that is, again, it's August the 1st. Okay, 41 days back. Okay, and that is encoded with the 40, what's left on the clock. Okay, other interesting thing is, if we go 41 days the other way, okay, it takes us to 10, for the right, 10/22. Okay, October the 22nd. Okay, that date that I keep going on about. Well, of course, that date is, obviously, it's in the hoverboard scene in Back to the Future. That's the day. If you look at the newspaper, I'm pretty sure it's 10/22, but that's the hoverboard scene when the courthouse is smashed up. Okay, i.e. the dam is falling. So again, this connects back to that scene in Back to the Future with the 10/22, this date. So that's pretty dang interesting. Okay. Um, so so that's basically what I wanted to do for the kind of the sort of encoding that was there that I was seeing. Okay, I've mentioned the 8-minute jump before, and I might have even made the connection with the 18 that's in the chart of rain, with that being a balance point. But I haven't done this 41 day jump before. I've only just recently mentioned that. I mentioned it a couple of times a little while ago, and then I just recently mentioned it in one of 88 Finiston Porus's videos in the comments there. But I thought I'd do a video on it just to explain it. And yeah, that's the 41 day jump, the thing that connects this 8-1 with 9/11, and also the 10/22 in the hoverboard scene, the hoverboard scene in the film as well. So, not to mention how many times that 10/22 shows up, or 1/22 shows up in other guises. So, get rid of all that for a second. Actually, I don't actually. What do I want to talk about? What I wanted to talk about is the idea of the clock stopping. Okay, what's that idea with the clock stopping? Okay, and there's like a dozen different ideas and ways of interpreting the idea of the clock actually stopping at a certain point. I'm just going to take one of those ideas and run with it a little bit, maybe two. I don't know. I just want to talk about it a little bit. But the idea of the clock stopping, if you were liking the idea of that clock being your heart, okay, there's I don't know how to explain it without getting too crazy technical. But if you think about your heart, right, it ticks. Yeah, it's people call it the ticker, right? And just out of interest, I read something on Google there about, I was trying to find what the the most common heart rate was. Well, I couldn't find that, but it did say between 50 and 60 beats per minute, right? Experts reckons the optimal heart rate. Well, of course, that's 60. What did I just say? 50 and 70, I meant to say. 50 and 70 beats per minute, and so 60 is right in between. So 60 beats per minute, like 60 seconds, okay, and your heart's beating, boom, 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 okay. So what we got going on is we've got a timepiece within your chest, basically, and we're allotted a certain amount of time on the earth, and that's what we've got, And so what happens though is when that ticker stops, you're dead. Okay, so it is interesting if you look at the actual scene in 1955, even though he's gone back to a fictional past. If you look at that place, it's very well maintained. It looks clean. It's nice, And I, draw the idea that it's, there's the idea of higher moral standards. You look at the school. Marty says, "Oh, they really cleaned this place up." It's tidy. People have, if you like, higher moral standards, or more respect for one another, or more respect for their environment, or that's how it's displayed through the physical environment that's there. We can see that people have a greater respect, or a higher moral code at that point, right? And then jump forward, and things start going downhill, right? So we have that degradation when the clock stops in 1955. We have that degradation of society, or just reality in general, right? So there's an idea there that when the clock stops, when your heart stops beating, okay, and you, so what's being said by that is, I'm not talking about actually being dead. I'm talking about the idea of taking on a persona now, taking on a fictional idea as your, what I like to call the fictional person, which is the idea of a birth certificate, or the straw man birth certificate, however you want to have that idea, the legal person. People take on that identity. Okay, that identity itself is dead. That's just a piece of paper, and somebody else has control over that idea. And so this is why this is important, because when you decide to take on that persona, essentially your clock stops. Yeah, your temple, which is what the courthouse is, your temple is now not alive. It's now a dead entity, right? You've now become a birth certificate person, which is now subject to man-made rules made by another man. So you're now not free anymore. Okay, so you've gone into a system where you're not free. You've gone into the matrix. Okay, so the idea of the clock stopping is actually going into the matrix for me. The other idea, I mean, you can flip this around. You can say, well, the other idea of the clock stopping is, again, the idea of not being, if you're outside of time, if you're out of time as well, your perception of past and future disappears. That's what creates time, really, in the first place. Is this idea that we can project into the future and we can recall the past. That gives us a sense of time. If we couldn't do either of those things, we would just be right in the present. And would we even realize that we were, in time, so to speak? Would we even think that we were going through time? Well, if you've got no basis, no point of reference with the past and the future, then does time exist? Probably not, in the sense that we think about it. So anyway, I forgot what I was going to say now with this, but the idea is that now, if you can get to that point of the clock stopping, so to speak, where you're not controlled by the past or the future, okay, you can again become free again. Because what people do with the legal system does this all the time, because it's all contract law. And a contract, the purpose of a contract is to bind a man in time, okay? That's the whole purpose of a contract, because a living man cannot be bound by a contract. So in order to bind a man, right, with a contract, a living man with a contract, what we have to do, this is what the legal system does, is it creates the fictional person. And the fictional person is the thing that's really bound, okay? And then what man does, he plays along with that thing, okay? And so again, if you can be the living man, now see, this is the counter opposite of what I was just saying, I think, if I'm recalling stuff right. But this is the idea now that the clock can represent coming out of time and not being controlled by the matrix, not being controlled by a contract. You know, a contract is saying you must do something at this date, or you will pay a certain amount by this date, or you will go to work for this long, or whatever the contract is saying. But it's binding, you know, a man through the fictional person to doing something over a time or at a time, okay? Living man is only bound in the here and now, okay? So this is interesting with the whole idea about contract law and everything. And of course, you know, the courthouse is where all that contract law exists, and all those deeds and birth certificates and records. That's where all that stuff exists, okay? And those records obviously represent history, or contracts which represent future events, you know. So I mean, it's really interesting, all these connections, really. I mean, they're all it's all the same ideas floating about, but it's just really interesting the way it all fits together. So that idea of that clock stopping is pretty important, if you can understand the reference and the way to look at it. And again, when you are, or when we are, looking at these sort of symbols, it's important to put the symbol into context as well with the story, okay? Because a symbol doesn't, it has meaning, but again, the meaning can be dependent on the context of the story. It will depend on the meaning of that symbol. Not always, because there are certain symbols that have a stronger symbolic meaning, but they still, you can still change the you can still look at the meaning differently, even on those strong symbolic meanings. And again, that's where context of the story comes in. Instead of just looking directly at the symbol and saying, well, this symbol synchronizes with death, ergo it just always means death. You know, that's probably not the best way to look at explaining something, you know. Yeah, that's not the best way to look at explaining something. You have to look at the full context of the story before you just say, well, this symbol only means death, you know. But there are symbols that have a stronger meaning for certain things than other things. I don't know what I'm even saying anymore. But that idea of the clock stopping, that idea of not being controlled by the past or the future, which could be contracts or deeds or birth certificates, those kind of things. That would, you know, if the clock stopped, then you're no longer you're no longer controlled by the past and the future. And then again, with the the clock stopping, the idea of the clock stopping representing the heart stopping in the man. You're no longer living anymore, you know. So again, if you're no longer a living entity, that means you're being controlled, okay? Which is, you're not free, okay? And again, that courthouse, again, it represents the dam. It represents your own physical body as well, you know. It's the thing with the ticker, okay? It's the temple. You've heard people say your body is your temple, okay? And inside that temple is where all the fictional stuff is generated and stored, okay? All the ideas, okay? So again, that thing has a lot of symbolism with it, okay? It's also the dam, okay? It's also the two twin towers, you know. So I don't know. There's no real, you know. I guess it's just a case of really thinking about the interpretation of some of this stuff rather than just lumping it as a one size fits all answer to things. Anyway, well, I think that was it for the video. I just really want to keep this short. I wanted to show you that 41-day jump. I wanted to show you the 810 or the 81 that's in that encoded in there, and obviously the 44, which again, obviously people associate 44 with death, but it's also can also be associated with you know, a beginning and a restart. So how do you want to look at it? Do you want to look at it as death, or do you want to look at it as birth? Again, you know, starting afresh, a fresh start is, sometimes it's nice to have a fresh start, you know what I mean? Oh, that's it. That's it for the video. Let's just call it a day on that one, okay? Anyway, I'll catch you next one. Alright, enjoyed that. Cheers, bye.